Got a little soul speak on the ascension that we all share. This unveiling, this apocalypse. You know, all this discussion of what is reality, conspiracy, heresy, truth that's stranger than fiction. Doesn't get any better than this. It's not just time to bring on the apocalypse, it's time to start riding it. It's not going to hurt us. Because one thing's for sure, in our conscious mind and even in our subconscious, if that's what you want to call it, we have always survived. And the reason for that is because we never die. So when it comes to ascension, what else is there to talk about? This ascension, unveiling, is not complicated. It's just a microcosm of the state of our being from any point, from this present moment to any point in our past. And in regard to the past, now we can look back to see, to awaken without the element of linear time. Yeah. Because the wisdom still comes. Because the universe is never late. That means we can take from our past the powerful wisdom of the eternal moments, seen when we unveil the hurts and the blame given and received. You know, we've reached a point where forgiveness will cease to exist. Because perfection did not create forgiveness, but as a path to a higher perfection, a new reflection of itself, of ourselves. Yeah, it's true. It's just not necessary forgiveness, and neither is earth love. So we can stop chasing both right now and all the false securities and failed searches that go with the lofty goals of a moral world. Both the things that they put beyond our reach and the reasons they gave us for not being able to reach them. It's time to re-enter the fold of the immortal, the fold of the I Am soul.
Hello.
What's going on, Jason?
All right, let me just get this shared here. That's good.
Yeah, I shared everything out during the intro. And hello, everybody. There's too many people in here for me to go down the list and say hello.
Glad that we got this working. I love your intro. It's new.
That's actually the first Soul Speak music video I ever did out of about 100. I was, yeah. I wrote a bunch of stuff, and then I was told, go downstairs and make a studio. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just start talking your words to music.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I love it. I love that. I mean, it might be, it's not new, right? Like, but it's old stuff, but it sounds new.
Yeah.
because I remember my very first video with you, which I recently saw again in the deep dive, and it had the same song, but it didn't have the same level of the song. So it's either the same song and I have just completely different ears, which is totally possible.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it was. It spoke to me a lot more today than it usually does.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I've had a very moving morning, and your comment reminds me of God, my voice is shaking. I don't even get nervous, but yeah, for a couple of years, I would go through these energy sessions with Morgan, and I'd come out the next day and I'd be like, "You look different today.
Yep,
you've changed." The world looks different. And it took me a couple of years to figure out that it was me that was changing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very true. Yeah,
Welcome.
Speaking of changing, the energy, wow. That's all I can say, right? Since July began, it's just been like,
God, it's been so long since we sat down together, but so
and yet
much
it hasn't actually been that long.
I know it hasn't. So much has happened. I've been watching the stuff going on, Celebration Station, Activation Station, and the deep dive, and I don't catch a lot of stuff, but I would catch these testimonies from people.
Yeah.
What is he doing?
We're having some great experientions out there in the world right now.
Yeah, and these people coming in and just saying, "This is what I have achieved." Basically, that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And reading the stuff coming out of those groups, I just want to say to everybody, if these shows resonate, please share so we can stay above the algorithms at Facebook. And also, thank you for your love and support contributions to keep us going by the seat of our pants every day. And that's pretty much how this thing rolls, because as you were just saying a minute ago, you can hear a song or hear some words or read a book, and then 6 months later, 6 weeks later, 6 days later, you come across the same thing and it has a whole nother message.
Oh yeah, definitely. Movies are great for that. I love watching some of the most powerful movies over and over again, like every few months, because it's like the whole new level of depth to it. Like Contact is one of those movies that you can just keep watching.
Oh my God, we went through a period a couple of months ago, and that's one of the movies we watched.
Dude, that's a great film.
And really, I guess Morgan and her friends had discovered this process of when the energy's coming in and you can't really make this or that of it, to sit down and watch a series of movies or a series, and you'll actually process this stuff in ease and grace. So we did that in January when we first got here, and we were going through, I guess, the island initiation, and man, there was just all kinds of stuff happening. She got sick for 13 days. I got sick for 17 days. We never get sick. We're moving around from place to place. She looked at me one day and said, "I love you, Todd. You've done a great job, but I can't do this." And we found ourselves in what are now good friends of ours. They said, "Hey, can you watch our house for 12 days and our cat?" And so we sat there, and this would have been in January around, I guess there was a blood moon eclipse or something.
Yeah, I actually just watched the video from that time with
us. Did you really? Yeah.
That's in the deep dive. So it's fun that we're like coming full circle now, right? Yeah. And that actually fits perfectly in what I wanted to talk about today. So this is great, because everything that this year has created for us is a lesson for us to learn from, because this is the year of transformation. We are transforming into the selves that are worthy of the kingdom of heaven, so to speak. Yeah. And that worthiness is where we get struggled, and we run into those things. It's like, I can't do this. And all of a sudden, if you take a deep breath in, you just did it. Yeah. Right. But it's that fear that you aren't worthy of it, or that you can't handle what's coming next, that's causing people to go left or right when they could go straight. But it's really about just taking that breath and being like, I'm still alive. I'm still here. Yeah. I guess I can do this.
Yeah. Value seems to be a word that's really jumped out. We had a private conversation with Vera Ingeborg, who's been out there for several years, speaking from the gut level, the human aspect, and translating with the download she's been getting. Anyway, her and her beloved Augusta, we had a conversation with them a few days ago, as we were stuck. Website, streaming, relationship, is Morgan going back? We got immigration issues, this and that. And Augusti really went into value. He said, you know, we can't play this game anymore. It's all about value. It's not about what you do or what, it's about the value you hold for yourself. So I just went through a few days of, you know, not knowing whether we were going to stay together, you know, with everything else going on, and the deadline coming up this Monday where she would have to go back. And so after that conversation, we decided, you know what, we can't be doing 4, 5, 6 shows a day because we're using the energy of force. We're basically, you know, not in alignment. So as things go, Morgan had scheduled 1 or 2 shows for, you know, the days following this conversation, and we just stuck with it. And stuck to the idea and watched actually a series called Outlander, where we process that stuff with ease and grace, and instead just took our mind off everything, and everything just kept coming in up to a point of a couple of days ago where we needed I think it's right at $1,800, right, to get this stuff in, and we got the forms, we got the documents, and so it came.
Yeah.
It came with less, you know, less is more, and then a couple of days went by, and it was just like, okay, well, we need to eat, and just we went, and I was like, okay, I want to go to the store and get this, and the thought in my head came in, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you have the money now. Hold on, and I thought, no, that's not what it is. I value what's happening, and so I bought the groceries, came home. As soon as I get out, a couple of contributions came in, matched the money that we spent, and here we are. So it's the same thing you're talking about, value, worth, and I think that's a great way to start. So where do you want to go from here?
Well, I mean, the first thing you said a whole lot there that's really important to kind of understand is like one thing you went over really fast was you were trying to force the world.
Yeah.
And where we're at now, you can't force the world anymore. The world just like will crush you if you try to force it to do something. And it's really about that letting go and watching movies, going and like watching TV shows, things like that, because you want to learn what the energy is telling you, not because you want to escape it, is a great way to translate, because it is going to bring up stuff for you. And you did mention about less is more, which it is. And that was something that I wanted to talk to you about as well, is like every time you do one of these shows, you're in essence doing a healing session.
Yeah.
But that healing session is then viewed by the world. So what happens is you have witnesses that are observing a healing that is causing all these ripples to occur in the world. And if you do too many of them, you're actually not contributing in a positive way, because you're putting too much out too fast. And that's something that I learned a long time ago, is like, there's only so much that we can do if we're doing massive impact work. But that little bit that we do is more than if we did a lot, because it doesn't get lost in that grind. If you're doing 20 shows a day, that's great, but people can't watch 20 shows a day. So the message gets lost in there, or they watch them back to back to back to back, and then they don't apply anything that they learned. And so it becomes this challenge of like pure content at the right time. Because it's easy to share everything at once, but if you share everything at once, then not everything is understood. But if you slowly share everything, then by the time that you get to the point where you share everything at once, you've already shared the parts of it. It all comes together as this perfect puzzle, and people are like, oh, I get it now. And learning to navigate that in this new world is challenging, because it's the opposite of what we're taught. We're taught just give it our all and then see what happens, which is great. But if we give it our all up front and see what happens, we're not able to have anything left for ourselves. So if we give it our best effort, not our all, because our best effort doesn't have to be our all. And many times over, our best effort isn't. So for instance, giving it 110%, something I hear all the time, it's called borrowing from future potential. If I give my moment 110%, then at some point down the road, I'm only going to be able to give 90. It's much better to give 100% every time than to overpower the world, because to create an extreme leads to an extreme. So when we overwhelm ourselves with too much, then we underwhelm ourselves with a rest period that comes in next.
Yeah.
And learning to play in the middle of that, that's what we're all learning to do right now as a society. Is like, okay, these influxes are kicking my butt. They're coming in left and right. There's like no time to breathe. What's going on here? I'm going to go do all this spiritual stuff and all this other stuff. No, the influxes are doing the spiritual stuff for you.
Yeah.
Our job is now to do the physical stuff, to go outside, to go on a bike ride, to go jogging, to go hang out with trees, like to get out of the spiritual just for a little bit because it's handled. All these influxes is so much that if we go spiritual in the influxes, we get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's handling with action something in the physical to balance them. It's kind of like when we were stuck in the virtual purge back in the day. We were going through those experiences where we had to hyper physical, like work on our bodies, really strengthen ourselves, self-massage, things like that. Well, that's where we're headed now. The spiritual is handled. I'm not saying you shouldn't go learn about spiritual principles. It's just you don't need to do it as much as you used to. You can pretty much close your eyes, not listen to anyone else or anything else, and just rest. And you will be in a state of meditation further than the monks that studied for 30 years back in the day. It doesn't even take any effort really anymore. The challenge is, can you handle being spiritual and living?
Yeah.
Because what I see is a lot of the people that are spiritual aren't able to live. They're overwhelmed because they're trying to do what they used to do to handle life, but it doesn't work anymore because we're already being given what we used to do naturally. So how do we live in this new world? And we live in this new world by going out and seeing movies, watching TV shows whenever we feel overwhelmed, not going deep into meditation and overwhelming ourselves further. It's kind of like if you are drowning, you don't go under deeper.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, right? And that's what people are trying to do. They're drowning in spiritual currents of information and energy. And they're like, I'll just keep going to the bottom. I'll eventually get to the other side. No, you'll hit the bottom of the ocean and there won't be anywhere else to swim or anything. And then you have to turn around and swim back up.
That's right. Embodiment. Somebody mentioned embodiment. And let me just tell everybody, we have been having some issues for the last 2 weeks. People getting knocked off repeatedly. I got knocked off about 8 or 10 times as I was watching it on my phone on the last show. I heard that if you update the Facebook app on your handheld, that might help. And otherwise, you might want to go to the Zoom room and watch it there. And I just put the link up. Continue.
Yeah, so it's just about acknowledging and saying, okay, the way that I once was doesn't work anymore. And I can acknowledge that if my life doesn't look like it wanted to look like.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. If your life looks exactly like you want it to look like and everything is running smoothly and perfectly in your life, congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing, right? But if it doesn't, then it's time to reevaluate what you're doing in your life that's causing it not to work anymore. Because right now we're supported more spiritually than we ever have, which is great. It is still, I'm not saying don't meditate. I'm not saying don't continue to evolve. I'm saying don't do as much of it because you don't need to, because you're already evolving naturally. And that's my way of doing it now is I'm more physical. I'm working on working out more, getting my body more in tune so that it can handle those currents so it doesn't knock me off course. But that's the difference. Before, there was almost no spiritual currents. So we had to go very deep within ourselves to find a current, turn it on, and then expand it out. And we had to keep going in and keep turning it on and keep expanding it out because we would get shut down over and over and over and over again. That was the world prior to November of last year.
Yeah.
It was like constantly requiring upkeep every second of every day. Going in, we're turning on the hose. Going in, we're turning on the hose and just trying to get a sip in before the hose turned itself off again. And now it's the opposite. The hose is broken on the on switch. So it's flooding. There's nothing you can do to turn it off anymore.
Yeah.
And I've had people that are like, can I just tap out? They like literally have written this on my wall. Like, can I just quit? Can I tap out? Can I please just stop? And I'm like, no, because you'll drown.
Yeah.
But you can learn to swim better. You can strengthen your body so you can handle it better. And that's the only way that we have. Like we got to get into a space where we start structuring our form through praying and blessing our food and our water and everything that we put in our bodies, making it sacred so that we don't take on anything that isn't sacred, so that our bodies become stronger and sacred. Because to make sacred everything in life is the goal of a divine being.
Yeah.
All the people, all the places, all the things that we put in our bodies, everything to make sacred.
Yeah,
and that brings me to understanding sexuality, which is what we just got. We just got that gift on the 16th. Today is the last day of the major push in of this template. And sexuality is connection, right? So the way that we once understood connection and any misunderstandings around that have been being updated in the collective. And it's led to this massive shift. For me, I actually had a hip issue that ended up hurting my foot and like popping out my bones. So now my toes actually have space between them because the electricity and the amount of information mistranslated and caused a feedback, and my body popped out the bone. And it's okay because it's healed now, it's fine. But now my posture is perfect. Before, my leg was like this from an injury I took in soccer when I was a little kid. So now my feet are like straight again because my body healed naturally because I made room. And that brings me to our next conversation, room, making room. And making room, like you gave a great example, watching a TV show, watching a movie, but not from escapism, is actually making room. You're stepping into a space of alchemy, letting the codes flow through you, and you're learning from them as if you're in that experience. And there are a lot of shows that go through experiences that I personally and my body never want to go through. So if I observe them in TV, then I don't have to go through them because the echelons are met. The understanding is met. The wisdom can be gained through that. That's the era that we're in, right? And I talked about this on our very first show a long time ago with density shift and how we're no longer in a mission-oriented status, that everything has changed, that now we're moving into this alchemical perspective instead of this suffering and service perspective. And that's where we are. And that's what has happened this whole year, has been teaching you to become the alchemist.
Yeah.
But you can't become the alchemist unless you have room to alchemize things. So how do we make room? First is making room in your body. That's huge. Because if you don't have room in your body, you're going to mistranslate your alchemy. So you're going to want to make the world happy, right? And instead, you're going to make the world sad because you're pushing through something that is a veil around you that's not true. It's an illusion. And so your best intentions, once they push into that veil, are then translated differently and they come out completely opposite. So doing the inner work, which means strengthening the body, which means expanding and acknowledging that you have that current running through you naturally now, and it's not as hard to use it. But using it in little tiny bits instead of overwhelming your world, because you overwhelm your world, it pushes back into you, you keep pushing it, it pushes you, and then you have this rocking back and forth motion that's not helping anyone.
Yeah. 2 points. There was somebody on the show a few days ago, and I don't remember who it is, and I'm certainly not criticizing or throwing rocks at anyone, but they said something to me that just didn't resonate anymore. And it goes along with what you're saying, even going back to the first show, which is we make these steps forward, kind of like a 2 steps up, 1 step back thing.
Okay.
You know, kind of that energy. And I thought, you know what, that doesn't resonate anymore. The faucet's on and it's just running, right? Like you said.
Yep.
Yeah.
You either survive the faucet running and you learn to swim, or you drowned.
Yeah.
And as painful a metaphor that is, that's pretty much where it is. Like, you cannot survive this world in the old way.
Yeah.
And people are getting sick left and right. People are barely functioning because they're trying to do what worked for them for the last 20 years of their life, and it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And it won't. In fact, it's going to work less and less by the day.
Exactly.
We're going to be required more and more. That water flow is turned on max as what we understand it as, and it's not our max. It's turned on low, and yet we're drowning in it. It's going to keep being turned on higher and higher and higher and higher until a point where we literally look at that hose and go, it's impossible for that much water to come out of it. And then it will still continue to enhance. The law of expansion states that it will always expand. And we will have to expand with the tide, or we will be drowned by it. So to all those listening to me, and you're saying, okay, well, you said the purge was the hardest part. The purge was the hardest part because it was forced. We had no choice in the way that we were facing certain areas of our lives. Now we have a choice. And while this might seem hard now, anytime, if you look at history in any major shift or paradigm change over, it's always a very difficult transition. But that year of transition, you've already made it over halfway through.
Yeah.
When we get to August, for those that have already made the ascension line, it is like you can take a deep breath in and exhale and just be like, thank you. Because right now there's a little over 30,000 people on the ascension line. And at the end of August, 500 million, the mass migration occurs, will come over too. So imagine like trying to keep the world upkept with a skeleton crew. 30,000 people doing 6.8 billion people's job. Because that's what we're doing right now on the ascension line. And then on the other line, and this is important for those on the transit line who are listening as well, while it might seem like it's becoming impossible, it's asking you to become more yourself. Because every single day, more of the light beings transition from the transit line into the ascension line. And what occurs in that moment is that person's light is no longer part of that collective. So it seems more hopeless and it seems harder. But what it's doing is, for the longest time, these lights that were in this transit line, or actually in the world back then, they took up space. And I'm not saying that was bad, or I'm not saying that was good. It just simply was. There were tons of light beings that held the upper echelon, and when the light came in to be processed, they handled it as best they could, and then little drips came down. But you see, they held so much space. And so because that space was held, other people didn't believe they could get up there. Now, the truth was anyone could get up there. It's not that these upper echelon beings were better than anyone else for any reason. They weren't incarnated better. They didn't have more past lives. It wasn't any of those stories. It was simply they did the work as best they could as it was handed to them, and they never complained. So they became the upper echelon beings. So those beings took up space in the collective. And because each one of those beings is slowly transitioning over, more darkness, it seems, or more confusion or chaos, it seems, is happening because more space is being left for people to expand up into greater value in themselves.
Yeah.
And every time that they transition up, they transition over. And so this occurrence that we're in, this weird moment of reality this is all I can say to describe it, is that there's a transit line and an ascension line, and the people on the transit line are being pushed like this because January 11th is a solid date. On January 11th, the bottom falls out of the transit line and it ceases to be a thing. So when we come to January 12th, you will either be gone or you will be here in the ascension line. And that's the process that they're in. But each time that someone transitions over, it seems less hopeful over here. And all I can tell you is, as long as you maintain yourself and you continue to work on yourself as best you can, even if it seems like it's becoming dimmer and harder to breathe and it's very difficult, that's not true. That's the illusion of seeing lights that aren't you going away. But this allows you to expand into greater light within yourself. The hose is turned on both sides. So you're going to learn to swim regardless of where you are. But for those that are on the ascension line, life becomes easier every day. For those that are on the transit line, life becomes more expanded every day. It's asking more of you every day. So if you've been someone that has existed on other people's levels of responsibility, you're going to find it more difficult every day, but not impossible. Nothing that you are experiencing is impossible. It may seem impossible. I had 5 emergency sessions the other day. People literally that have been working with me forever call in and they're like, I can't handle this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's not a bad thing. That's just what you're going through. So take a breath, sit with me for a second. Is everything wrong? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, so what's right? So now we're moving away from this all of my life is wrong, or all of this is impossible, right? And we're beginning to break it down. And this is the step that everyone will want to take if you are in that overwhelm, is acknowledge that some things are right for you right now.
Yeah.
Because if you can acknowledge some things are right, then immediately all of those polarities that say all or the total or anything like that that are wrong go away. And this leads us to this freedom of mind where we're like, oh, okay, well, then that's actually possible. And now I can understand this. So now I can move over to a little bit of where I was. And once you get back to where you were before you got knocked out from whatever wave or whatever hit you, you realize that you are you again and everything's possible again.
Yeah.
But it's remembering that when you are in that intense experience, that is temporary. That is not who you are. That is a test of you to expand into something greater.
This is interesting because, and I get what you're saying totally. I'm not experiencing this, and when I say I'm not experiencing this, in these shows that I'm doing, I'm seeing a revitalization, like a revitalization, where the soul memory is kicking in through this sharing of the experiential, where people are saying, even yesterday with the last show we did, she came in and she said, you know what, I'm coming out now. We all need to come out now. And then the other thought I had too was going back to, I'm trying to keep up with some of these comments and keep everybody congruent. This is high-powered intel that you're talking about. Moves very fast. But you said something about space. How do you create space? So that's what I was talking about when we started the show a little bit, and I was conveying some of what happened to me, because I really don't know how to put it into like the terms you do, which is beautiful. And so what I got was, how do I create space? As you were saying that, and I thought, okay, that's it. He just triggered the actual rationalization or understanding or comprehension, at a cognitive level, which is, as this stuff, because it all happens here. Doesn't matter what Jason tells me. Doesn't matter what Morgan tells me. Doesn't matter anything. It's right here.
Absolutely.
And I'm going through these motions, and it's like they're both playing out. The transit line and the ascension line, they're both playing out, and it could use other terms. So as these thoughts came in, don't spend that money, lack, limitation, whatever the energetic representation of it is, I've been choosing to boldly, and I'm saying this just for my own universe, not that I'm anything, but like boldly say, you know what? I'm going to go and buy these groceries. I'm going to go and get me and my wife a takeout meal. And it's not arrogance. It's the humility's there. But there's something about taking those steps outward. We always thought like, okay, clear the shadow, you create space. But I'm seeing something different now in these conversations I'm having with people on the show, which is take these steps, what you said earlier, these actions, which may not actually be anything more than going to work out. They don't really like compute in an equation and say, okay, do this, and you're going to shift that. But when you take these actions of faith, the transitive verb, to trust and believe above and all else in your own intuition, your spiritual confidence expanding, stepping forth, maybe it's a strong word, fearlessly, it actually creates a vacuum behind you, like a wake of a boat going down a lake. And that's what I was getting from you. So could you elaborate on that?
Well, so first of all, it's not fearless. That's like the biggest illusion that we have. There's no such thing. Because remember, like the very first show, I talked about how fear is actually a good thing. Fear shows you where you need to step through next. Danger and fear are different. For anyone that's new to me talking, this is important. If you are stepping into danger, you are losing faith with your body, and your body's losing faith in you. So don't step into danger. But stepping into fear and through it actually gains confidence. And it teaches your body that it can trust you.
Yeah.
So imagine that you're living in an invisible maze and you don't know where the walls are. You can't walk through a wall.
Right.
So every time you try to walk through a wall, you end up at the beginning again. But if you follow your inner navigation and you just like go, okay, well, actually, no, I feel like I need to buy these groceries and they're over here. That's because there's a wall here. And if you would have tried to step through that wall, you would have started over again. So you turned and you go, okay, groceries. Because the way forward isn't a straight line. And it never has been. No matter how many people think that's true, it's not true. Like You go all over the place. And when you finish your life and you look at from the top down at your maze of life, you realize that it was perfect. But when you're in the maze, it's impossible to realize that it was perfect until you come up out of it. And that's the cool part, is like, as you go up and you begin to elevate up, you see the maze for what it is. You know what actions to take next. You can't see the whole maze, because to be able to see the whole maze would be kind of defeating the purpose of being alive. But you get glimpses of the parts that you're about to play, or the parts you have played as you progress and you elevate up. That's why I like the concept of elevation. So if you ever find yourself at a wall where you can't get out, and you don't know why, you just take a moment and elevate up a little bit, take a look, and you'll know which way to go. So that's what I'm talking about by making room. Because if you are like condensed in a small little space and you're really uncomfortable, that's because you don't know what you have around you. But if you pause and you elevate up just a little bit, that space expands too. You're not going to feel that claustrophobic value anymore. You're going to be like, oh, okay, well, now I can see two different directions where I only saw one, and the one that I saw was a giant wall, so it was impossible. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's really interesting, because I've noticed that in myself and in many, many, many other people, which is, and I can only go back 8 years, but I mean, for myself, but when you go back, I mean, like one of the ways I ground is when I get into these constricting states that you're talking about, the tunnel vision of, oh my God, here's my situation. And you're like an ostrich with his head in the sand.
Exactly.
And you go back and look, for me, I go back and look 8 years and I think, oh my God, all these divine episodes even with physical apparitions, divine intervention, these channelings, these transmissions, these things that have happened. How the hell can I forget all that?
Yeah.
It's like we forget all that. So when you say, think about what you have, so many people today, especially this year, in this year of expansion, have come out and have experienced real time these things. And you hear it all the time. Oh my God, it's happening to some other people. It's happening to me. I'm not weird. I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind. But those things seem to really be a standout for me, to remind us of our divine nature.
Yeah. You have everything that you need to navigate this maze. Prior to incarnation, you gave yourself everything. That's the thing that a lot of people forget, is like, you can handle anything that is given to you, anything. You just don't know the part of you that can yet. And that's what that self-discovery is. Every experience gives you the opportunity to discover yourself at a deeper level. And this game that we're in is a master's game. So you either become the master that you are and navigate the maze, or you don't make it through the next phase of this. Like, it's to that point. The maze is now like falling apart as you go. So like, you have so many days to move forward before that piece falls away and you end up in another maze and you have a different angle. And it's a very challenging thing for our minds to comprehend timelessness. In fact, I would say it's a downright impossible thing for our minds to get that, because our minds are only as good as we are. But if we let go of our minds and elevate up into something greater, all of a sudden, everything makes sense. It's like this divine clarity that comes. And this is what we're in right now. We're in an invitation as a race to become divine beings and remember that again. We're already divine beings, but to become even more divine beings, and I would say to remember the divinity that we are. And this invitation is like next level. It's something that we've never, as human beings, ever been given. We've attempted to get to the place where we could be invited as human beings, as a race, but we fell after that. It didn't work. So here we are again, given this opportunity, and this time humanity said yes. And that's why we have these ascended master gifts that we're getting, like the one that we have right now that's coming in, and the one that we have in October that's coming in.
Oh, there's
October is the final one. So
what is the one in October?
It's like Celestial Awakening, I think, if I remember correctly. It's basically the divine template of the inner angel unlocking within ourselves. and the misunderstandings of humanity as a total race dissolving. So that's the update. So like this one was around sexuality, which is the true connection of all that is.
Yeah.
This next one is about the grand value that you are in all of time and space, like the true celestial purpose of humanity. And it's what's going to usher in a major, major change. It's also the very final one of the gifts and starts the 10-year clock. So that'll be fun too.
October
28th.
So can you expand a little bit on the recent intel or the recent occurrence or availability of this sexual?
Yeah. So the paradigm shift around sexuality, the misunderstanding of it was that men are providers, they are these things and all these labels, right? And women are the nurturer and all these things and all these labels. And women's sexuality isn't something that should be explored or is like a good thing. Now, again, these are not true. This is the misunderstandings. Men are blank. Women are blank. And I like to leave it blank because whatever body you're in is irrelevant.
Yeah.
If you're in a male body, congratulations. If you're in a female body, congratulations. But society began to value you based on the body that you're in. And this last gift that we got began to free us of that. It started to say, I am. And that's it. Not I am male, I am a body with a lingam, I am a body with a yoni, all that other stuff, right? Just simply, I am. It wasn't, I am homosexual, I am pansexual, I am transsexual, I am gay, I am sober, I am all these things. No, it was simply, I am. And it was that connection to the I am that was given back at a deep level in the collective that changed us. Because a lot of people that I know were stopped in their tracks and were like, whoa, okay, no, I just am. I don't need to continue to prove myself as this or do these things or label myself as this thing. And the reason that this is so important is because it creates true connection. If I show up as me, not even as Jason, but simply just this version of reality that I understand as a totality of myself, and I acknowledge you in that same state. And I'm not talking about just words. I'm talking about at a presence level,
right.
True connection occurs. And that is sexual. That is a creation moment, regardless of what gender, regardless of any of that.
Yeah.
Because we've made sexual energy into stimulation, not connection. We've made it into having something to do always, keeping our mind occupied, analyzing this, analyzing that, looking at their factors, right? Like, are they this colored skin? Are they that colored skin? Do they have these color eyes? What color hair do they have? All these things that stimulate certain parts of us instead of just acknowledging it as we are.
Yeah.
And that's the cool part about where we are, is we are now in that transitional phase. And that gift began that journey. Again, each of these gifts are given for 10 years. So the 10-year clock on each gift is given at the date that it's given. But in the next 10 years, the way that we look at sexuality is going to be different. The way that we understand our own sexuality is going to be different.
Yeah.
And it's going to free us up to actually come to truth.
Yeah.
Because as long as you label what you are as anything other than I am, you are taking yourself away from truth. And this was a major call to action around that. And these last 3 days have been amazing because of it. And I'm really looking forward to witnessing the ripples go further. Because this was just the energetic download, right? So then the actual action and changing phase starts tomorrow, where the ripples have gone out and we begin to see the physical manifestations of it in the whole world. Obviously, those who are sensitive are like, oh, no, I am definitely feeling these physical manifestations right now. But I'm talking at a global scale, witnessing the gifts. And that's what's really cool.
Interesting question. I don't know if you saw that, but I asked him.
I don't. There's no like chat on my screen.
On Zoom? Okay. So he says, why are we feeling something different? And I said, can you be more specific? Now, he comes on us every show, Paul.
Okay, yeah. What is it that you're referring to?
That's what I'm saying. He says, all your guests and I, which might be a kind of too much of a blanket statement or too broad of a statement, but all your guests and I are feeling like other changes are taking place besides I am. I don't know.
Well, yeah, everything that isn't true to that statement is coming up to be resolved. So if I am this, then that is keeping me from being the I am. And therefore this is what's being targeted by that light, because it's encapsulating it and it's bringing it in front of you and it's saying, deal with me. Yeah. And so while this is a great thing and it is wonderful, it is very strong and it's in our faces and it's very raw and it's very real. And I've talked to people who are just in tears because it's so impossible for them to handle. Yeah. And I tell them, it's not impossible. There's a part of you that can handle it. Where is it? Yeah. What part of you can handle that? And it's the I am. And it sounds simple. Oh, okay. Well, if I go into my I am, I can handle anything. I would love that to be the case if it was that fast and that easy. But we shift into the I am by every challenge and every experience that we get. And that cracks away from the shell that we believe we are so that we can expand into greater. Yeah. It doesn't happen immediately or instantly for most people. It can, and very, very few times, I would say in my life, I've had it happen that way. But for the most part, it's like deeply looking at myself because the situation reflects something for me to see. And I may not want to look at that. Yeah. I might have resistance. In fact, I will be honest with you and say 90% of the time that the universe knocks on a door that I don't want to open, I have resistance for that. Yeah. But then I suck it up and I go, okay, I'm going to integrate that part of me that can handle opening this door because I know I'm not it right now, but I know that I have it. So I'm going to find that part of me. I'm going to integrate it in and I'm going to open that door. Yeah. And whatever comes out, whatever it sticks to, whatever challenges or struggles are created because I open that door, I know that when I finish it up, that door will be open and I'll be that much greater. Yeah. And also that door will be open. And so other people will see that door open and know they can open it too.
Here. Yeah. Melinda Frank's just, by the way, Paul said, great answer. The one that posed the question. Melinda Frank's just reiterating what you're saying. This last shift for me was the most intense so far, and the outcome was absolutely delicious. Yeah. Now, I love what you said about the availability and the actualization of true sexuality. You know, we've obviously, Morgan and I have been pretty open about our experiences, but what really stands out for me with what you said was the word creativity. Yeah. Creation seed. So, you know, a lot of times we think about sexuality being, you know, a label or an occurrence of what we perceived was intimacy. And what really struck me was that word creativity, because in these interactions, as we align with true sexuality and all that encompasses, and two people or more, say two people just for this discussion, come together in an exchange, whether it be what we perceived as intimacy, you know, sex, or if it's just a conversation like this, or we run into each other at the grocery store, there is an element, a third energy that's created from that alignment that is a real catalyst, it seems to me.
Yeah.
Transition. Yeah.
When we have the capability as human beings to be in our sexuality and free in it, not just to be in it, but to be free to be in it, we will go through a revolution unlike anything that anyone's ever heard of, because to be in that level of connection inspires creativity at levels that are just beyond my mind and my capability to even express right now. But I know that it's possible because I remember it. And I remember it so deeply that it makes me want to cry thinking about how beautiful it can be. And in the next 10 years, we're going to move there naturally because we have to, literally have to move there. Humanity will not survive the next 10 years if it does not change. And it's already agreed to change.
Yeah. So
and that's a big thing there. Right. We were handed the invitation. We looked at the invitation. We said, hell yes, I'm gonna do this.
Right.
Or we would not be here.
Yeah.
Now, was that a conscious choice for 90% of the world? Absolutely not. But their divinity made that decision, and their whole life is being rearranged so that they can get there. So yeah, these next 10 years are going to be monumental. We're going to look at these next 10 years and go, 10 years from now, we'll look back and be like, I can't believe that much changed. And it's going to be wonderful. I look back at like 1980 and I'm like, wow, how have we changed this much so fast? But that is nothing in comparison to the next 10 years.
Right.
Especially with like the introduction of augmented reality and virtual reality and the levels of depth that we can explore into our world and add to. It's just going to be like unheard of, the changes.
Explain that. Augmented reality and the other.
So recently, I think it was in China or Singapore or something, they did a dragon flight in augmented reality where everyone could see a dragon flying around perfectly. It was like a holographic thing.
Yeah.
Because they were able to create the images and pictures just enough and sync it using everyone's phones and use the waves to actually create a dragon.
Mm.
Can you imagine a world where you're walking around and your dreams are literally created? You're going to be able to experience and see. You couldn't feel, like the dragon wasn't like something you could touch yet, but that level of understanding. And then there's a new movie that just came out. Have you seen the new Spider-Man?
No.
Go see it. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen for understanding what we're going through.
All right.
They did such a great job of bringing the pieces together to unlock so much. And I will not do a spoiler live for whoever watches this, but I will say that that movie unlocks so much, and I highly, 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 highly recommend it. It's almost as good of an unlock as Doctor Strange was.
Paul says he did see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that movie's incredible. Yeah. So I'm not going to run it, and I would prefer that no one else runs it in chats or anything like that. So whatever, just know that I highly recommend going and seeing Spider-Man because it will unlock so much for you, and you will realize just how silly we make things.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what life is for this next, what, we're like 7 months in, so the next 5 months. I mean, all we're doing is saying, hey, I'm silly. I can acknowledge that I'm silly. This part of me was super silly, and I don't mind it because it's teaching me something. So I'm going to integrate it. I'm going to step forward through my fear into the new world. And every time that we make that decision, we become more whole. We become more the I am. And for everyone that's new, I define I am as this. I, the personality, meeting the ascended master to come together as one. Because as an ascended master, like if you look at all the ascended masters to ever exist, they all had a personality. They had their own flavor of what they wanted to do.
Yeah. We
like to shame and blame the personality a lot, but really the personality is just a projector. Like it doesn't, we don't say that a projector is bad if we watch a film that's a horror film, right? Like, and we're like, oh, that movie was horrible. We don't go, well, the projector's fault.
Right.
So why do we do the same thing to ourselves?
Right.
The Ascended Master is the film playing through the projector that is the personality to create the perfect heaven on earth.
Yeah.
But you see, for the longest time, other things have been what have filtered through the projector other than the Ascended Master quality, which has led to a pretty interesting environment, to say the least. But to blame the projector doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It's just a tool. Yeah. And that's all the personality is. It's a tool. But we have the opportunity to clear up all the misunderstandings and become that master again, that ascended master within ourselves, yeah, to begin to create heaven on earth. And everyone is capable of doing that now, just for the record. Just because I give you these timelines and I tell you all these things, this is a humanity timeline, and it's always changing.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you the best estimate based on the energetic currents that are coming in as I'm talking.
As it stands now. So,
yeah.
So on that note, Valerie asked if you've already built your treehouse on the new earth, but that's kind of fun. But no, on that note, so what, because I don't want to run out of time. So what would you advise people? What could you heads up could you give us? I mean, I know there's this culmination in August, and then you had the thing in October. As we go forth, what would you suggest to people? What would you advise to people?
Go see Spider-Man.
I already looked it up on my phone while you were saying that.
There you go. No, but that would be like honestly, the quickest, easiest way to help deprogram you is go see Spider-Man. But other than that, just be aware that the world is changing rapidly. We are in a transitional phase as a race up until January, which means that you are going to get thrown around. It's just going to happen. And don't get upset when you do get thrown around. Just go, okay, I know what this is, and this isn't the rest of my life. If you can say that statement, you will free yourself of 90% of the burden that you're carrying in that moment. Just remember, this is not the rest of my life. Because we're in a temporary time. And that's all it is. It's a temporary time. So you can survive this. You will survive this as long as you don't give up. And you have all the tools you need. As for all the other stuff, I mean, I post updates on my walls pretty much constantly whenever major influxes or things come up. And at the very beginning of the month, every single month, I post exactly the entire month broken down, all of it.
Yeah.
And I do that because people pre-wave, people post-wave. Depending on where you are in your conscious journey, you're going to experience things differently. So my job is just to help people be aware that things are coming in the energetic currents and to handle them as best they can. But if you remember, this again is super important, everyone is completely different.
Yeah.
So all the advice that I'm giving you as a choice.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you have to do these things. So you don't have to go see Spider-Man or all those other things, but Spider-Man does unlock a lot.
Yeah.
It's like literally programmed to help wake up humanity. All the Marvel movies are. They did a really good job of always giving the codes necessary at the exact time, which is one of the reasons why I really love that universe.
I wonder if those people, the creators, are consciously doing it.
See, to me, honestly, I don't even care. I'm just grateful that it happens.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Lego movies. Whenever a Lego movie comes out, like Lego Movie 1, that changed the world. Lego Movie 2 came out, that also changed the world. That was like huge. The movies that come out for a reason. They're always perfect. Because remember, nothing in life can exist unless it is in its perfection.
Yeah.
It might not be perfect for us. And again, this is where personal discernment comes in. But it's perfect for the world. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Every atrocity, every challenge, every struggle, every movie, everything comes out for someone. Yeah. And it's not up to us to judge what that is. It's up to us to discern what that is. So I can look at something and say, that's not for me. And I'm not disrespecting it in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
I'm acknowledging that's not for me. 99.9% of horror movies, they're not for me.
Yeah.
I don't need to add the spirit of fear to my life. Does that mean that the spirit of fear is a bad thing? No, it is helpful for some people. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah.
It's clear to me what is and isn't for me. And that's the key. If you can get to that space of clarity, you can navigate your maze with grace, ease, and efficiency.
Yeah. Okay, so let's make sure that, because you're doing a lot of stuff out there, I can't even keep track of it. But why don't we make sure, because we've got like 5 minutes, we've got to go into another show, but I want to make sure people know what you're doing, what you're creating, what you've created and are creating. I've watched it actually explode. I've watched the celebration station, activation station, and the other parts of it. Can you explain to everybody what you're doing, what's happening with that, how can they find you, can they participate, and that type of thing, and anything else you want to announce, events?
So we're on Instagram at MTVO Team. We're on YouTube at MTVO Team. Pretty much every social media platform at MTVO Team. And all we're doing is we're just trying to get information out there for people to make choices if they want to. Again, MTVO's purpose is to be an example. That's our whole role. We just want to be an example in the coming times, and we work on ourselves so that we can be an example of something different so that people have that choice and they can see it clearly. And that's the gist of it. Activationstation.org is a wonderful place where my whole life's work is up there for love donations pretty much, other than sessions and the transmissions, which are done every year. And I mean, mtvo.org is the other place. And then obviously this is really important. on my Facebook, even like I can't accept everyone's friends requests. It's just I have so many friends requests, it happens. And I have to delete people to add people. So if you don't message me and tell me directly, you're probably not going to get friended. That's just how it is. But be aware that I have a public profile, so you can read everything that I type openly without friending me. You can follow me if you want, whatever. Just be aware that do what feels right for you. If my message doesn't make sense to you, that's totally okay. And that doesn't mean that you're a lesser being or anything like that. It just means that there's someone else out there that it has a message for you that's going to help you to find your own message. And again, the key is always take whatever you learn in the social media world, the news, whatever, and use your discernment on whether or not it makes sense to integrate it into you and then make it your own. And that last step there is so key. Please take the time to make it your own. I had a student ask me this the other day. They're like, you don't mind that people quote you all the time? And I said, no, as long as they don't actually use my name or anything, I don't care, because if it makes the world better, it makes the world better. So for those people that are like, well, maybe I have to like put, colons and put his name in there. No, I don't care. I literally don't care. Just make the world better. And if I can help you do that, awesome. If not, do it yourself. I don't mind.
Yeah. Free energy, open source. Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
There is no ownership. Yeah.
Exactly. Just remember that time is valuable and don't waste it for you or others.
Yeah.
Work with what works for you until it doesn't. And if my stuff doesn't work for you or doesn't work with you in this time, that's totally fine too. There's no need to judge or be great or anything with anyone's technology. Everyone is perfect until they aren't. And the only person that can tell you that they aren't perfect is themselves. So until that happens, just work on you.
Right on. Jason, it's always a pleasure, man. I appreciate all the work you're doing. You're helping a lot of people. And I love what you say too about take this information in.
Yeah.
You're obviously hearing it for a reason, and take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. But don't be surprised if what you left behind might come back to see you too.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything that gets behind you will eventually come back in front of you.
Exactly.
The beauty of it. So dissolve everything by neutralizing it. Work through what comes up for you. Otherwise, you get to face it again.
Right on.
And then one other thing, I just want to celebrate this because we just crossed over sending 1,000 activations a week.
Wow.
That's 1,000 activation. That's one activation creates a ripple across the planet every time it's received, and it creates an example on this planet. So to have 1,000 of them sent per week means that 1,000 people are working on their puzzle.
Yeah.
And they're becoming their own self-source, and that's beautiful. Because anyone that's new to this, activation technology actually is very different. What it does is it helps. Anytime that I solve a puzzle, I write a technology. And that puzzle that I solved, I take outside of time. So it's no longer sourced to me, but sourced to everyone. So when you receive it, you get that solved puzzle, and it finds all of the excess pieces around you, connects them to the puzzle, solves the puzzle, you get the experience, you become more yourself, and you move forward. So the whole purpose of Activation Station and all the technology and all the examples is this. A lot of, over 90% of the games being played on this earth don't belong to this earth anymore. They're outdated games. So if we can solve the outdated games faster, we can work together on the games that we can't solve yet or haven't been solved for humanity. And I feel like that's the goal of why I've come here, is to solve games as best I can and to begin working on games others can't, so that they can work on games I can't, because I can't solve everything alone, and neither can you, neither can anyone. We're all here to work together eventually. And that's the beauty of where we're headed. We're in almost to that eventually. In our lifetimes, we will be at that eventually. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
As always, every time that I come on here, I feel like we just make the world better. So I love it. Thank you.
It's always a nice flow. That's 150 activations a day, people, by the way. And think of all the repercussions that go with that, with the quantum exponential math that's been introduced to the earth. So that's great work with you and your team. And I look forward to collaborating with you again. Best to you and yours, Jason.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed and beautiful one. Bye, guys.